Let me tell you a little story about a man named George Washington. Born in Virginia on February 22, 1732, he would become the only president to receive every electoral vote. A very tall man, Washington began his military career at 20 years old, joining up with the Virginia militia. At 26, he married Martha Custis and helped raise her 2 children. By his 40s, George was earning his stripes, commanding troops of the Continental Army to victory in the Revolutionary War. In 1789, he was chosen as America's first president. During that time, he helped create the first presidential cabinet system and national bank. Today, Washington's image can be seen on Mount Rushmore, the dollar bill, and quarter. He has his own monument, the tallest in D.C. America's national capital is named after him, as well as a state, the only one to be named after an American president. On December 14, 1799, while checking his farms in the freezing rain, George Washington developed pneumonia and died at the age of 67. And there you go, a little story about a man named George. Let me tell you a little story about a man named John Adams. Born in Massachusetts on October 30th, 1735, he would become one of the nation's first constitutional lawyers. Considered one of the most influential founding fathers, his first stint in politics was as a delegate in the Continental Congress during the Revolutionary War. At 28, he married Abigail Smith and together raised 6 children, including John Quincy, who would become the nation's 6th president. Through his years, he helped draft the Declaration of Independence and wrote the Massachusetts State Constitution. John was the first to nominate George Washington as Commander-in-Chief during the Revolutionary War and John Marshall as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. In 1789, he ran alongside George Washington, becoming America's first vice president. 8 years later, he was elected as the nation's 2nd president. In 1800, he lost his re-election to Thomas Jefferson and became one of 4 presidents in history not to attend his successor's inauguration. John Adams died on July 4, 1826, at the age of 90. Ironically, that day, Thomas Jefferson also passed, all while America celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And there you go, a little story about a man named John. Let me tell you a little story about a man named Thomas Jefferson. Born in Virginia on April 13, 1743, he would become the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. His family name and hard work prepared him to be one of America's most famous founding fathers. In addition to writing the Declaration, he was the first U.S. Secretary of State, the 2nd Vice President, and 3rd President. During his presidency, Jefferson brokered the Louisiana Purchase and the Lewis and Clark Expedition, who would have been completely lost if not for their faithful GPS. Also known as Sacagawea. Tom co-founded one of the country's major political parties and is the only president to serve 2 terms without vetoing a single bill of Congress. He was an architect, inventor, lawyer, and founder of the University of Virginia, the only American university to be founded by a U.S. president. At 29, Jefferson married Martha Wales Skelton and together raised 6 children. Today, Tom's image can be seen at the Jefferson Memorial, Mount Rushmore, $2 bill, and the nickel. Let's face it, we all know Franklin got the better deal in the money department. Ironically, Thomas Jefferson died on July 4, 1826, the same day as John Adams and the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And there you go, a little story about a man named Tom. Let me tell you a little story about a man named James Madison. Born in Virginia on March 16, 1751, he would be known as the father of the Constitution. Madison graduated from what is now Princeton University. 24 years later, he married Dolly Payne Todd and together raised 1 child. Considered one of America's founding fathers, Madison penned the U.S. Constitution, Bill of Rights, and much of the Federalist Papers. He also came up with the concept for the 3 branches of government we still use today. Madison was the nation's 5th Secretary of State and 4th President, making him the first president to serve in Congress. He supervised the Louisiana Purchase, Embargo Act of 1807, War of 1812, and helped form a political party. Today, Madison's name lives on, including 2 Navy ships, the capital of Wisconsin, and the $5,000 bill. On June 28, 1836, James Madison died at his family's estate in Virginia. The 85-year-old was the last living founding father. And there you go, a little story about a man named James. Let me tell you a little story about a man named James Monroe. Born in Virginia on April 28, 1758, he would become the last founding father to serve as president. At 18, he dropped out of college to join the Continental Army, where he befriended George Washington. 4 years later, he went back to school to study law under Thomas Jefferson. At 27, James married Elizabeth Courtwright and together raised 3 children. Destined for a life in politics, he served in the Continental Congress, Senate, and as governor of Virginia. He was also Secretary of State and Secretary of War at the same time. In 1817, James Monroe was elected as the nation's 5th president, winning 80% of the vote. Sadly, he was also the last president to wear a powdered wig and knee breeches. Many say James is most famous for proclaiming the Monroe Doctrine, which said the U.S. wouldn't stand for any more European interference in Latin America. The capital city of the West African country of Liberia is also named after him, and he is featured in the painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware. James died in New York on July 4, 1831, at the age of 73, becoming the 3rd president to die on Independence Day. And there you go, a little story about a man named James. Let me tell you a little story about a man named John Quincy Adams. Born in Massachusetts on July 11, 1767, he would become the first president in history to have a father also serve as president. In 1788, he graduated from Harvard, pursuing a career in law. While working in England, Adams married Louisa Catherine Johnson and remains the only president to have a foreign-born First Lady. John served in the House of Representatives, Senate, and as Secretary of State. In 1824, during the presidential race, Andrew Jackson won the popular vote. However, the Electoral College voted in favor of John. Enter the nation's 6th president, John Quincy Adams. Like his father, John only served 1 term. He and his father were 2 of 3 presidents who did not attend their successors' inaugurations. Adams is the only president to be elected into the House of Representatives after leaving office. In 1843, he became the first president to sit for a photograph. On February 21, 1848, during a heated session of Congress, Adams collapsed to the floor. 2 days later, at the age of 80, he died inside the Speaker's room in the Capitol building. And there you go, a little story about a man named John. Let me tell you a little story about a man named Andrew Jackson. Born in the Carolinas on March 15, 1767, he would become the only president to pay off the national debt. At 13, he joined the militia as a courier during the Revolutionary War. He was captured by the British, where he contracted smallpox and nearly starved to death. By the age of 14, Andrew was the only surviving member of his family. Jackson served in Congress and helped shape the modern Democratic Party. He was also a lawyer, politician, farmer, and military commander. In 1794, he married Rachel Donaldson Robards. In 1828, Andrew Jackson was elected as the nation's 7th president. Sadly, his wife died 2 weeks after the election due to a heart attack. His claim to fame was his command of American forces to victory in the Battle of New Orleans. Jackson was also the first president to survive an assassination attempt. Today, many counties and cities bear his name, as well as a U.S. Army base and nuclear submarine. His face is also on the $20 bill. On June 8, 1845, Andrew Jackson died at his home in Tennessee at the age of 78. And there you go, a little story about a man named Andrew. Let me tell you a little story about a man named Martin Van Buren. Born in New York on December 5, 1782, he would become the first president not born of British descent, but Dutch. At 14 years old, he began his career studying law. At 24, he married his childhood sweetheart, Hannah Hose, and together raised 5 children. Sadly, after only 12 years of marriage, Hannah died of tuberculosis. Martin served as the governor of New York for only 2 months before he was appointed to President Andrew Jackson's cabinet. He also served as a U.S. Senator, Attorney General, Secretary of State, Vice President, and in 1837 he was elected as the nation's 8th president. Martin was the first president to be born an American citizen and the only one to speak English as a second language, as he grew up speaking Dutch. He was the 3rd president to serve 1 term, though he ran 2 more times, and first to sit down for an interview with a reporter. On July 24, 1862, Martin Van Buren died in his home in New York at the age of 79. And there you go, a little story about a man named Martin. Let me tell you a little story about a man named William Henry Harrison. Born on February 9, 1773, he would become the last president born as a British subject. In 1790, he began attending the University of Pennsylvania, where he studied medicine under Benjamin Rush. Following his father's death, William joined the Army at 18. At 22, he married Anna Symes and together raised 10 children. He found comfort in political life, where he came to fame as the man who led U.S. forces against the Indians at the Battle of Tippecanoe. He served as a major general, congressman, senator, and governor. In 1840, William Henry Harrison was elected as the nation's 9th president, becoming the oldest president elected at 68 until Ronald Reagan 140 years later. On March 4, 1841, he delivered the longest inaugural address in U.S. history, 2 hours in the freezing rain. A month later, on April 4th, Harrison died of pneumonia, becoming the first president to die in office. It was also the shortest term ever served by a president. Following his death, William's widow was given $25,000 and the right to mail letters free of charge. Harrison's grandson, Benjamin Harrison, became America's 23rd president. And there you go, a little story about a man named William. Let me tell you a little story about a man named John Tyler. Born on March 29, 1790, he would become the first president to be born after the adoption of the Constitution. Raised within a successful family, Tyler received a great education and graduated from college at the age of 17. He served as a lawyer, congressman, senator, and governor. In 1840, he became the nation's 10th vice president, running alongside William Henry Harrison. After only 1 month in office, President Harrison died of pneumonia. On June 1, 1841, Congress declared John Tyler the 10th President of the United States, becoming the first Vice President to succeed the presidency. The incident eventually led to the creation of the 25th Amendment. Tyler's most significant accomplishment as president was the adoption of Texas into the Union. He was married twice and had 15 children. His first wife died in the White House. Soon after, he was married again, becoming the first president to be married while in office. John is also the first president to have a veto overridden by Congress and first to have impeachment proceedings brought against him following an unpopular veto. On January 18, 1862, John Tyler died in Richmond, Virginia at the age of 71. He is the only president in history not to be officially mourned in Washington due to his allegiance to the Confederacy. And there you go, a little story about a man named John.